Experience is always better in a group. The Christian experience doubly so. We're just a group of gamers that love to talk about life, God, and video games, in no particular order. So whether you're a newbie or a grizzled ancient like us, we want to help each other roll the level.
Welcome to another edition of the Roll the Level podcast. My name is Matt, and I am here today to talk about video games and life and God in no particular order with some of my very best friends. And I want to check in with those guys, see how they're doing. So, Sarah, how are you doing today?
I am pretty good.
Good. I love the enthusiasm this morning. It's great.
I can't think of anything that's bad, so we'll just go with that.
Good. All right, fair enough. Dave, how you doing, buddy?
It has been a little bit of a wild week for me, not going to lie.
right.
So I am glad to be here. I wouldn't necessarily say that I've had a bad week, just it's been a very, very full week.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. How about you, man?
Doing well. It has been also been a very busy, full week. There's a wedding tomorrow that Tara and I are a part of, and Sarah's a part of as well. And so that's been like an extra layer of busy.
Yes, I can attest to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm excited for next week to only have to work 50 hours, so it's good.
Yeah, same. Just normal life next week. What is that?
Right? So, but no, in all seriousness, it is going really well. We are excited for the wedding. It's coming up with some good friends of ours, and it'll be good. So yeah, so that's where I'm at. I wanted to throw a question to you guys because I've been replaying Doom Eternal on my PC, and I'll get into more of this later. The reason I'm replaying it is because the Bethesda launcher doesn't have cloud save. Thank you, Bethesda launcher, for that. And I had to format my computer and lost all of my save data. So I had 100% of that game. But anyway.
No.
It's one of the very few games in life that I actually go through and unlock all of the things.
But now you have to do it again before the DLC.
Yeah, which I'm already done. I beat the game the other night, and then I'm now going back through and just unlocking all the stuff. And I will say, like, it has done a great job at making that game very accessible for unlocking achievements. It's one of the reasons I like going through it. Right. It's because you can easily just grab what you need. You don't have to beat the level or anything. You just go in, get what you need, and get out.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, and even some of the achievements, like if you want to, you can use cheat codes like infinite lives and stuff. There's only like a few specific ones that you can't use any cheat codes for. But I mean, it's one of those things, you don't really need them. If you've beaten the game, then you kind of get the rhythm. But you know, it's interesting. As I was playing that game, and I'm going to throw this question over to you guys in a minute, but as I was just playing that game, there was some really tough moments in it that I'd forgotten about. And Doom Eternal is a completely different type of shooter. I've played a lot of different shooters. I play a lot of different shooters, everything from Call of Duty to Halo and anything in between. Old school, new school. I love retro shooters. But Doom Eternal has a very rhythmic shooting style.
Sure does.
Where like movement is key. And it takes a while to get back into that groove if you've stepped out of it for a while. I've been playing a lot of Modern Warfare, Warzone, and like to go from that over to Doom, like it took me probably a good half the game to get in that. And it was tough, man. Like I struggled in some of the parts. Now I am playing on a tougher difficulty than I did the first time around, intentionally, but it was still like there were moments where I'm going, I don't think I can do this, or I'd have to walk away. Because I really like my monitor and I didn't want to punch it. So,
well, it's funny that you talk about those different styles of shooters because last week, as I was writing my review for the RTX 3090, I was testing a bunch of games in a bunch of different resolutions and whatnot. Doom Eternal was one of those because it's one of the few games that actually functions really, really well at 8K. But the jump from Doom Eternal to Battlefield 5
oh my word,
is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it's not even a jump. It's like you tripped and fell down the stairs.
Yes, several flights of stairs.
Yeah, right. So, but that did raise a pretty interesting question for me, and I'm curious. I've got another game I'll talk about in a minute, but I'm curious for you guys. Like, have there been games for you guys, either recently or in the past, that like there are moments that just are a struggle to get through, but like it's worth it because the game is awesome and the story is great, or you know what's coming down the pipe, or maybe you're just like, oh, this game is so good, it's worth pushing through those tough moments. Like, have you guys experienced that at all? And Dave, maybe you go start us off on this, buddy.
Yeah. Several moments.
All right.
I would say probably the most recently, I mentioned last week that I played through Control. over the summer, and fantastic game. Really, actually, very beautiful game if you have the hardware to run it. It's almost like the new Can It Run Crisis sort of checkpoint. But Control was really, really good. But man, there were some boss encounters that it took me so stinking long to get through those, because there were, and it wasn't just like it wasn't like a Dark Souls-esque sort of thing where it's like you just have to get the rhythm down and whatnot. There were just so many things that were going on within those particular fights. Like, for example, there's and I know I'm going to sound silly saying this because there's no context if you haven't played the game, but there's a mold boss.
Okay, cool.
That is just so infuriating. Oh my goodness. There were several moments where I had to walk away from the game. I'm like, okay, this is a game I'm supposed to be enjoying myself while I'm playing this.
Right.
And I'm not enjoying myself right now. So there was that, and then I've mentioned several times, and got the duds to prove it here today. Huge Destiny fan, but there are some, and that's an understatement. There are some quest lines for some weapons in Destiny that the payoff is awesome. But getting Thorn is a bear.
Yeah.
Oh my word! I love that hand cannon. Absolutely love that hand cannons. And then I should say that trio of hand cannons with Thorn, Lumina, and the Last Word. But my goodness, that was a slog for me. And partially because all of the Crucible matches that were needed and whatnot. There was a point in time though, coming down to the end of it, where it's just like, I need to call in some friends because I want to finish this, but I'm just struggling so hard with this.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's fair, man. That's fair. Sarah, what about you?
Probably I always go back to Demon Souls is usually my first one, because it's like, man, that game is hard because I'm just bad at games. But man, it is so rewarding to get past a boss. You feel like the top of the world. And watching that trailer again for PS5, it's just like, I feel these bosses. I remember all these moments that I beat these bosses, and it's like, oh, that was so good. But a more recent example I will say is Fall Guys.
All right.
Man,
that's just punishment.
It's not okay. It's hard in the fact that team games are terrible.
Yes.
Terrible.
Yes, I would agree.
I hate relying on other people. There's this game where you're supposed to push a ball. Push a ball through obstacles, and you're supposed to put it in the goal, and there's 3 teams. And the point of the game, Lucas can attest to this, if I'm playing on his team, I will tell him the rules. I'll say, you push that ball, and that's all you do is push that ball. Because other people will go off, and they will not push the ball. They will try and just screw over the other teams. And it's like, no, we have to push our own ball. That's how you win the game. And I put the controller down and just walk away because I just get so angry at people. So it came to the point where even the devs of the game took out you can't get more than 1 team game in a row anymore.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
Because people hated them so much.
Yeah.
But having sweet victory at the end of the match is like, yes. I want those costumes.
I actually liked the team games.
I'm still mad I missed the Chell
you
costume
really?
from Porno.
I did like the team games.
Oh my word.
Oh, they're the worst.
No, that's funny.
Worst. Egg scrambles, awful. Hoarders is awful. Jinx is awful. Awful.
Well, it's funny you talk about the challenge of big boss battles, because the other game I've been playing recently has been Remnant from the Ashes, which I talked a little bit. I think I talked briefly on last week. I can't remember.
Yep.
But that's another game. It's like kind of a Souls-esque, a Dark Souls-esque style of game, where it's all about learning boss mechanics, and every enemy can kill you in that game very easily if you're not paying attention. Now I will say it is much easier than Dark Souls, and I appreciate that, because conceptually I love the concept of a Souls game, but I'm just mechanically terrible at them. But that game had some pretty intense boss battles. And I've still got a couple. I think I've got 1 or 2 more bosses to get through for my first playthrough. But I remember, man, this was probably a few weeks ago now. My buddy and I were playing through, doing co-op, and we got to this one boss, and it was 12 attempts in a row.
Oof.
And we were both pretty high level. We've been playing together through most of the game. Like we had leveled up, and this one boss just had two mobs, and it was just like the mechanics were insane. And you had like they would go into this charge up mode where if you didn't DPS them down quick enough, they would like blast you and almost kill you. And anyway, but I'll tell you, like there was like jump up and shouts on both ends when we finally did down that boss and get the sweet loot after it. But man, it was a slog to get through. It was probably, I think, to date, one of the hardest bosses. And that game, the funny thing about that game is like it works like Diablo 3, where the more people you have in it, the harder it gets, which I love. Like it scales. And it's funny because the next day, my buddy went back and played on his story and ran into the boss again. He said, "Yeah, it's super easy by myself." I was like, awesome. That's so great. So
and at that point, you're like, "Is your back sore for carrying me last night?"
Right? But no, like I guess the mechanics of the boss fight actually changed when you're doing it solo.
Interesting.
Yeah, because of the way I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but because of how it works, you're basically on this narrow bridge, and there's these like flying mobs on either side of the bridge. And there's a couple when you're playing multiplayer, there's some mechanics like one's in a cocoon and the other one starts. So the trick is you have to try to kind of get a leg up. You have to DPS the guy that's trying to kill you and DPS the cocoon down at the same time to get them both down 1/3 health. So that when he launches out of the cocoon, he's already lost 1/3 of his health.
Gotcha.
But you have to coordinate that with two people while you're being shot. So one guy's got his back to the guy that's trying to kill him the whole time during that first part of the encounter. So you're relying on your buddy to be like, oh, by the way, you're about to get laser beamed in the back of the head. But I guess that mechanic wasn't really in play when it's just single player, obviously. So there's things like that they switch out, which is a brilliant game design. That is the sleeper hit of whatever 2019 when it came out, or was it 2019? I don't even know. But incredible game. I can't remember, but it was I don't know. 2020 has been like 6 years long, so I can't even tell you what year it is. But again, it's one of those games where like some super hard, tough moments where you're just struggling to keep going, but the payoff is so worth it in the end. And it reminds me, and it's funny because we had talked last week about like it doesn't matter what the situation is, the mission's the same. You keep moving forward. You're still serving, you're still reaching out, you're still loving God and loving others. And Damien, you had made a comment after, and I think it was a really good comment where you're like, hey man, I think it's important for us to talk about like being in the difficult place.
Yeah.
And the importance of that, and that it's okay to be there, which I 100% agree. And that's what I want to spend some time today on. And we touched a little bit on this last week, but I think it would be good to kind of dive into this. So the question I want to ask you guys is, what's kind of been like the huge struggle for you during COVID? Like what's been the big thing? And it can be like now or even before, because I mean, we're still in the middle of it and there's so many things going on and stuff like that. But what has been kind of the one big struggle for you guys? And if you need a minute, I can go first, but if someone's ready to jump in, by all means.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead, Sarah.
So going back to Fall Guys.
Yeah.
So I hate team games, as I said, but
yeah.
I had to learn a big lesson during all of this pandemic time because I am not a team player. In life, I am not a team player. So I should take my own medicine because I am a very hypocrite. Because like once the pandemic started and my son was home, my husband was home, I was like, I'm going to be the one that serves everybody. And then like I was the one that serves everybody when people were allowed to come over and have like some breakfast together and the Jackbox parties. Like I was one, I'm going to serve people. I'm going to be the one.
Yep.
And I refused to ask for help. Like I was like, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to cook everything. I'm going to like, teach everything. I'm going to like do all the chores. I'm going to be everything. Which led to me just burning out. Like after all, like once Lucas is back in school, I was just like, I'm just burned out from serving. And and we like later on, just like, you're so stupid, Sarah. Like you're not meant to serve alone. You're not meant to just do all this alone. And I didn't realize that till it's like I was just so burnt out from doing everything. That's just like I'm still trying to pick up the pieces kind of thing. To remember like, okay, Sarah, this was your like slap in the head to start trying to delegate and not do everything. So burning myself out was my big part.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think I definitely don't think you're alone in that. I think a lot of people probably stretch themselves too hard, in various ways, but like pushing too hard, and again, because there's no normal, we don't even know what pacing looks like, right? So yeah, no, that's a fair one. Dame, what about you, buddy?
Yeah, Sarah, I'm really, really glad that you shared that. Oh boy, because for me, I can definitely attest to those same feelings of, wanting to jump in and kind of help out and be there for people.
Yeah.
I think for me, the hardest part is, and it's still kind of persisting. There's almost been a feeling of abandonment, to be honest. It has been so challenging for me during the season, and I know that like I'm not the only one that has ever experienced this or will ever experience or whatever, but and I don't, and I'm struggling to articulate this because I don't want it to come across like, poor me or anything like that. But I mean, when all of this hit, like there was such a pressure, I guess, on myself. I put this on myself. There's such a pressure to, step up and lead and to have a plan and to put that plan into action and to make sure that nobody got left behind. But the further in that we've gotten into this, like the more, I guess, like there's a way in which I'm seeing like there's a lot that I'm trying to do by myself and I'm doing alone. And then there's another side to that too, where I have people that have issues of their own, right? That they're trying to work through. And on the pastoral side of things, like there's that part of me that feels like, well, I've got to be the guy that calls everyone. I've got to be the guy that checks up on everyone, because that's kind of what you do, right? Like that's part of the title. It's part of the quote unquote job or whatever. But like there's that selfish part of me that's like, but I'm a person too. and I kind of feel a little abandoned myself in this. And so I guess like that's been a little bit of a challenge. And I don't want it to come across to say that nobody has checked up on me or nobody has asked how I'm doing or nobody cares or anything like that. But I think that the persisting feeling across the board has been that it's just a continuation of that isolation thing, right? That I talked about last week. That feeling disconnected from people. Like I feel like it's just kind of a continuation of that, where I'm trying to keep the wheels on the vehicle, and they're going in different directions.
Yeah. No, that's fair, man.
I can't grab them all at the same time.
That's right. I don't have enough arms.
Right.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's fair. And I get that. I took a long time to process this because I didn't really have a specific answer, because like I feel like I've been running so fast and so hard, and not in a bad way, but just because God's been doing really cool things, and we were riding this train that He has taken us on. Going like, what has been kind of the biggest struggle for me, and I honestly think like the big one for me has just been like the disconnect from my family, like missing family. We try to get out east a couple times a year and see family, and it's not, I mean, the family time is restorative anyway, but like just there is something like when you're from the East Coast, like going back to the East Coast, there's just something restorative about that experience. And I think my biggest struggle is like the normal things that I lean into to be restorative I don't have right now. My family and where I'm from and things like that, and my struggle in that is that like, man, I still am passionate about the mission I'm on, and I'm still passionate about serving, but I'm going like, I've got to figure out what these new restorative things are, and I don't know what that looks like. Like we tried to do a staycation in July, and it was fine, but it wasn't restorative. And so I think my big struggle is that like I'm lost a little bit on like what are the things that are going to restore me, right? Because the normal menu doesn't apply right now, because we can't go out east because they have crazy rules on people coming into the provinces. They have this weird bubble thing. So yeah, that has been my struggle, I think lately. And as I was kind of reading through and getting ready for this podcast, based on the question you'd asked me, like the scripture that come into my head that I kept getting reminded of was Romans 8:28. And it says in Romans, he said, this Paul speaking, obviously says, and we know that all things work together for the good of to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. That's an incredible passage. It's a misquoted and misrepresented passage frequently. But it's yeah, right. But it's an incredible passage because there is a hope and a promise in that, and a call actually as well. And I would love, I would love your guys' thoughts on this passage. I have some thoughts too, but I would love to hear from you guys on this. Like Romans 8:28, what does that mean to you guys? Like when you read that, what does that communicate? What are your thoughts?
For me, it's a reminder of, all scripture has connection, right?
Yeah.
And all scripture is good and God breathed and useful for teaching, correcting, rebuking, and training in righteousness. Yeah. So it's got purpose to it. So there's nothing that's there by accident. And so when I read this passage, one of the things that I'm reminded of is a statement of Jesus when he talks about God the Father as being a God who knows how to give good gifts. We are, again, looking at this from zooming out from looking at this from a broader perspective here. This is such a powerful passage because it's exclusive from the standpoint of, God works out the good for those who love him and are called according to his good purposes. But that's every single person in Christ, right? Yeah. Like, that's not like, okay, yeah, this is just a promise for pastors, or this is just a promise for ministry leaders, or those who have quote unquote the call. This is for anyone that's found in Christ. Like, this is anyone who is in a relationship with Jesus. And so it's such a powerful reminder that God is not, he's not abandoned us. Like, he's not a deadbeat dad. Yeah. He understands everything that we're going through. He's right there in the midst of it with us. And that there are some crazy, terrible things that happen in this world that happen as a result of brokenness, as a result of sin. Yeah. But God is still in the middle of it with us. And the most beautiful thing about all of this is, if you want any proof of like how God is in the middle of this, or if God is in the middle of this, like Jesus himself walked to an execution.
Yeah.
And endured an execution, one of history's most heinous forms of execution, so painful that we have a word to describe that. And yet, out of something so brutal, out of something so ugly and terrible, God worked out a beautiful way for us to be in relationship with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if God does not exempt himself from those things, and we still walk through situations that arguably are far more appealing than a crucifixion, then he's going to work out some of those beautiful things in us too.
Yeah.
And so, this passage of scripture is one that I mean, we quote it so often that sometimes, we forget the beauty behind it, but there is such an incredible wealth of hope that's found with it, and even throughout the rest of the book of Romans too.
Oh yeah, Romans is my favorite book, but yeah.
I'll go ahead and pass it along.
No, it's good.
Because I wanted your thoughts on it too.
Yeah. What do you think, Sarah?
It's a gut check. For sure.
Oh, okay. I like that. Explain.
Yeah. Well, just like I struggle with feeling like in a relationship, I guess I would say.
Okay.
And during all this COVID time, because I was not in my right place, like studying and reading and praying as I normally would when I had like time to myself, I felt a disconnect, and I thought like through this whole time I was doing the right thing. I was doing what I was called to do at that time, being by myself and being the strong person and doing like all of the things. Yeah. But was that really what I was supposed to be doing? Probably not. I was probably supposed to be listening.
Yeah.
So this is just to remind me that, hey, you love God. You are chosen. All of us are chosen. Like it is a thing. So listen, and like you have to know this in your core, or else it's not going to resonate with you. So it's just kind of a reminder to be like, Sarah, come on now. Like,
yeah.
You should, like, this needs to be probably like on my homepage kind of thing, like to remind myself. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
It's something I should read every day.
You bring up a really good point in that though, is that like going through difficult times, that's life. Like there's no promise that we're going to have, sunshine and rainbows and kittens and unicorns.
Not at all.
At all. In fact, we're actually promised difficult times. And it's okay to be in difficult times. That happens. And some people's difficult times are way worse than other people's. Like, I mean, the things I'm talking about today for myself compared to, some of the people out there, I mean, they're really not that big of a deal. And perspective is important. But Sarah, you make a really good point in saying that, it's important every day to remind yourself, to anchor yourself, to reread these promises of God. Like that's such an incredible discipline and practice to have in your life. That's meditating on the word essentially. But it is, I think it's the doctor from Doctor Who that says, forgetfulness is the human superpower. It's why we keep having babies in war. It's because we forget things so fast. And so that's, good on you. 'Cause that's a great discipline to have and to implement in a really practical way to navigate difficult times. There's a inspirational speaker named Joni, and you may have to help me with this name, the last name.
Johnny Erickson Tata.
Thank you, Johnny. Yeah, what you said. Inspirational speaker, author, singer, but also a quadriplegic and has been for over 40 years. And so the question that's thrown at them, like about God allowing suffering and all this stuff, because I mean, she wasn't born this way. This is where she's at because of an accident. This is what she said. This is an awesome quote. She says, God allows what he hates to accomplish what he loves. And that's pretty amazing to me when I think about it. It's a pretty intense statement when you think about it. But it leans into this whole idea that God really, he does allow things to happen in the world because of sin, because of choice, because of free will. God's like, all right, this is the consequence of that.
Yeah.
But there's this incredible promise that he will then go use this mess that we've created, that we are a part of because we're part of the human the race. He will use that to accomplish the things that he loves. And that is the promise here. It's not that everything's going to be wonderful and amazing. The promise is that God will use whatever the situation is to bring about his purpose, right? There's another great quote, and I could not find the reference for this. I just remembered the quote, so I pulled it up, and I have a link to it. It says, God allows everything into our lives for one of two purposes, either to bring us into relationship with him, or, if we already know him, to make us more like his son.
Yeah.
And that's another important thing to remember on this, is that every difficult situation is actually an opportunity. If you're a Christ follower, it's an opportunity to become more like Christ, who understands every temptation, who understands every struggle, who has experienced the worst of the worst. And it's important to have these perspectives on these situations because we're human and we forget. Apparently, it's our superpower.
Well, there is actually a really interesting thought that goes along with that, and that is that, we often talk about trial by fire, right? Where you're kind of going through rough times, and it's you're experiencing this painful burning away of things. But when we look at the way that like metals are purified. They go through these periods of intense heat and meltdown. All of that stuff really is to draw out. It draws out from us impurity. It draws out from us those things that would otherwise, from the metal sense, those things cause the metals to not set properly. And to be of lesser quality or less stable. And so when I think of the things that I've gone through personally, I know then that this scripture that we talked about in Romans 8 is true. That God has worked out any and every situation that at the time I would not have chosen to walk through myself. But he's used every single moment like that. He's used in a redemptive way, and either shown me something new about myself or himself or the world around us, or really used that moment to draw something out of me that maybe shouldn't have been there in the first place. And those were those moments where, all right, it's refining, it's difficult, it's painful, but God, in his infinite wisdom, and in his goodness. Again, going back to that quote from Johnny, he allows those things that and this is one of those things that I think of this every single time that I think of like Easter. Like God had to watch Jesus be crucified.
That's most
like I'm not a dad.
I'm
not a dad, but Matt, you and I have had this conversation about your relationship with your son, and there was a moment last year that I had asked you and your son to do some voiceover stuff for me. And when I listened to that father-son dynamic, it broke me. Because I'm thinking of God the Father watching Jesus suffer and like even cry out like, have you forsaken me? And like he did not exempt himself, who's sovereign and perfect and holy, did not exempt himself from that as well. Like, and knows the pain of watching suffering, fully capable of changing things. But allowing it for the greater good or for a bigger purpose than just the immediate relief or just the immediate comfort.
Absolutely.
Here's the truth in this, and this is something that I have to remind myself in the season that I'm in right now, is that God is more concerned with my character than my comfort.
Truth. Truth.
Now he comforts us in these moments, but he's far more concerned with my character and my Christ-likeness than my comfort.
Agreed.
And so in the midst of knowing that he cares about that long-term, which is of long-term comfort, right? In knowing that, it helps give me a better perspective of the here and now. Are there still moments that, I'd rather not walk through? Absolutely.
I have a long list of ones I don't want to walk through.
Is it frustrating to remember that and be like, but I don't want to go through this? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But God is still good in the midst of all that. And his ways are bigger and higher than what I can see in the immediate. And so if I know that God is working out the good, I love him. I'm called to his purposes as a follower of Jesus. So I know he's going to be good to his word.
Truth. Well, guys, thank you so much for diving in today with me on this. This was good. This is some good truth. And if for our listeners, if you're going through those difficult times, man, I encourage you, get in the Word, anchor yourself in the promises of Christ, because they are true and they are good and they are right. And that's the hope we have. It's not for today, it's for tomorrow. It's for what God is doing and what He's going to continue to do. If this is the first time listening, thanks so much for tuning in. You can jump on our website, rulelevel.com. We got all our stuff there. We're on the YouTubes. This will also be a video on YouTube as well as a podcast, so you can check that out. I think I've got most of those kinks worked out, and nothing lit on fire last week, so I feel like we can continue forward.
Nothing
adventure.
Lit on uncontrollable fire.
Yes, that is fair. That is fair. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us this week, and we'll talk to you next time on Rule the Level.